Hey, I'm Heather Christopher, owner of HT Travel Firm and certified travel advisor since 2006. We are going to talk about why you want a private driver guide, why it scares you, and how much does it cost, right? All right. Because that's always the biggest question if you haven't done it yet, if you've never experienced that luxury. We've also made a promise this year at the firm to try not to use the word luxury, especially without context, because luxury means way too many things to way too many people. But to me, a private driver guide service is the epitome of luxury. And it doesn't even have to be something that is necessarily overly expensive. Time and money are all personal to us. So what it actually entails, and most of the questions I get before you go on one is, A, is it going to be awkward? That's usually the biggest fear, is like, and y'all, I know most of you don't know my husband, but he's my socially awkward one. That's the one I always have to worry about. But my God, give that man a driver guide and he's like, he can be friends. He can be friends because he's like, I never have to see this person again. He doesn't care. But put him in a social situation with people that we actually have to interact with on a daily basis. Anyways, I digress. But my point to that was somebody who's like does not love to be on, doesn't love to be on socially. He loves a driver guide because he is the driver in our relationship 100% of the time. If we're going on vacation, if we're here at home, whatever, Brett is driving. I don't know if it's like that for you. Maybe you're the driver in your relationship. Well, the best part of a driver guide is A, no longer do you have that responsibility, but B, you're on a vacation where you don't know where you're going. Sometimes we're driving on the other side of the road. You're also wanting to enjoy and see the sights and actually have the experience. And you can't because you're navigating and you're trying to figure things out and you're being the responsible party here. So now driver guide comes along who knows the area, who typically is from there or has lived there decades. And guess what? They get to do it. So you just get to go around like this, looking side to side, eating snacks, saying, I have to use the restroom, and they stop. It's phenomenal. The other thing people ask about it being awkward always kind of makes me chuckle because I will tell you I'm gonna say rough average of, let's go with 85%. 85% of our clients who have hired a driver guide have come home and become Facebook, Instagram, pen pals, email pen pals, friends with the person who is their driver guide. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's almost always a male. I cannot think of a time where I've had a female personally or had a client have a female. It's just not a job we tend to do. Not saying you can't. But they come home and they become Uncle Danny, Uncle John, whatever. And it's just this really cool connection. And isn't that the point of travel in general? Not only do we go to actually experience something else, we want every single one of you comes to us and says, I want it to feel authentic. I want it to feel local. I want to go where the locals do. This is how you go where the locals do. When you're in a town, a teeny tiny town that you've never even heard of, going from either point A to point B, or there's something there you're trying to see as part of the itinerary, but you now need lunch, guess who's taking you to the local pub that he stops at? And it's probably owned by his cousin's relative or, his best friend from high school or some fun story like that. They are. If when somebody says, I want authentic experiences, I want to feel immersed in local, I'm like, driver guide is the way to go because you literally have this intimate view. And it's really cool because you also get to spend the time asking questions. You can ask, I know it's a faux pas to talk politics, but they're usually pretty willing. And you usually find out quickly if you want to continue that conversation. But you can talk about healthcare. You can talk about schools. You can talk about what it was like growing up there, what their family does. Do they have family in the US? They also want to learn from you. That's the joy to them. These people are not awkward. You don't get in that job and stay in that job being an awkward human and not being able to read a room. Our kids, like we just did this in Scotland last June, and there were days our girls were, Bree in particular was like throwing a fit, being at the time a 5-year-old, and they just read the room. All right, there's no talking right now. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. Or, hey, do we need to stop? Does she need snacks? Which, by the way, they always come equipped with snacks and water, sometimes beer and Coke also. And it's just such a nice thing, especially as a parent, to not think, or if you're somebody in a really high powered position, to be like, I didn't have to think anymore. Now, going rate, depending on the destination, I would say knee jerk going rate though is a minimum about $1,500 US per day. That includes the car rental, which is usually like a larger van of some sort, and then just depending on how many people. And that includes their accommodations. They're not usually staying at the same place you are, especially if you're staying at a 5-star or above, but they are staying somewhere obviously nearby. Most of them, I would also say, will work off duty. You have them for 8 hours, but I've never not had one not be like, hey, do you need a ride into dinner or I'll come back and get you. They're always willing. So helpful too when you're in a foreign country. If you don't speak the language and you need to go to the pharmacy, godsend. They can help you navigate through all of that. So highly recommend for your next trip considering it depending on what the trip is, but don't be afraid of it at the very least.